I went invisible for the first time on my 12th birthday. It was all Whitey's fault, in a way. Yeah, pretty sure everything's Whitey's fault. Systemic racism, colonialism, genocide, you going invisible, the whole works. Hey, it's October, the spookiest of all months, which means my Goosebumps reviews are in season for once. Oh, that rhymed, I didn't mean to. Though, if I'm being honest, this is probably the least Halloween-y Goosebumps book I've covered thus far. Well, it has some spooks, but you're sadly going to be disappointed if you're looking for some monsters. In previous episodes, we've had evil black and white dimensions, plant monsters, demonic masks, werewolves, witches, green slime, mummies, ghosts, a camera that can make bad things happen, and whatever the Beast from the East was all about. This book is mostly just kids sitting in attics looking at their watches. The book opens with Max's 12th birthday. He's having some friends over for a party and has to get everything just right. And by everything, I mean his hair. Getting ready means brushing my hair. My brother's always on my case about my hair. He gives me a hard time because I spend so much time in front of the mirror, brushing it and checking it out. The thing is, I just happen to have great hair. It's very thick and sort of a golden brown, and just a little bit wavy. My hair is my best feature, so I like to make sure it looks okay. Now, in the context of the book as a whole, I think this is supposed to tie the mirror Max is being all vain in to the magic mirror we're going to encounter later on, but the early part of this book really leans into hair as a major part of the story. Not only is Max obsessed with his hair on page 1, but some of the other characters are introduced via their hairstyle. For example, here's Max's friend and party guest, Zac. Zac took off his Red Sox cap, and I got a look at his new haircut. Wow, you look different, I said, studying his new look. His black hair was buzzed real short on the left side. The rest of it was long, brushed straight to the right. Whoa, I don't remember the Skrillex cut existing in 1993. Back then, guys either got the Billy Ray Cyrus mullet or the Zach Morris wave. Other party guests arrive, including the girls Erin and April. Erin is small and mousy with short hair, but in terms of personality, she's very rambunctious and daring, while April, taller with longer black hair, is more reserved and quiet. Basically, Chie and Yukiko. What, you didn't think I knew Persona? I know Persona. The reason Goosebumps sucks is because it doesn't have Mothman in it. Rounding out the rest of the cast is Max's little brother Lefty, nicknamed as such because he's left-handed. Truth in advertising, I guess. Max is alright as far as protagonists go, so Lefty takes the role of the bratty, annoying child this time around, having no sense of personal space, no real empathy, and no real grasp of the people around him. Plus, he keeps throwing a baseball around and breaking shit. When I turned back into the living room, Lefty was tossing the softball up to the ceiling, trying to catch it behind his back. He missed. The ball bounced up from the floor onto an end table, where it knocked over a large vase of tulips. What a crash. The vase shattered. Tulips went flying. All the water poured down onto the carpet. Mom tossed up her hands and said something silently up to the sky, the way she always does when she's very bent out of shape about something. Then she really got into Lefty's case. She started screaming, "How many times do I have to tell you not to throw that ball in the house?" Stuff like that. She kept it up for quite a while. Lefty shrank into a corner and tried to make himself tinier and tinier. He kept saying he was sorry, but Mom was yelling so loud I don't think she heard him. I bet Lefty wanted to be invisible right at that moment, but he had to stand and take the punishment. Then he and I helped clean up the mess. A few minutes later, I saw him tossing the softball up in the living room again. That's the thing about Lefty. He never learns. Hey, parents, did you know you can take things away from your children? Like, I know spanking is out of style these days, but that's still allowed. You know, I'm usually down on these annoying brat characters, but Lefty strikes me as genuinely ADHD. Maybe, I'm not sure. I'm far from a child psychologist, but while Lefty is the annoying character this time around, he feels a touch more real than the other quote-unquote annoying characters we've had up to this point. Maybe because he's not the point of view character this time? I don't know. I just don't mind Lefty as much as I did Evan or Gabe. So they have the birthday party. They play Twister and watch The Terminator, which I have to imagine the parents are oblivious of. Eventually, the guests dwindle down to just Aaron and April, so Max, Lefty, the girls, and Whitey the family dog head up to the attic to goof around. Whitey starts sniffing at the wall, and when the kids go to investigate, they discover a secret door. Behind it is a small room about the size of a walk-in closet, and inside there is a standing mirror with a light attached to the top. No big deal, really. The only thing weird about it is the fact that it's in this hidden room at all. The room is dark, so to get a better look around, Max pulls the cord and turns on the light, and then proceeds to vanish. He's gone invisible, freaking Aaron, April, and Lefty out. Max, confused, quickly turns off the light and becomes visible again. What was that? An illusion? A trick of the light? Before they can investigate further, Aaron and April's ride shows up and the girls leave. That night, after the parents have gone to sleep, Max returns to the attic, still confused and curious about what happened. Lefty isn't too far behind because bratty brother, and the two start playing around with the light, quickly discovering that, yes, turning on the light makes you invisible. What's more, the longer you stay invisible, the more lightheaded and fuzzy you feel. And the longer you stay invisible, the longer it takes to turn visible once you've turned that light off. A week later, Max gets Zac up into the attic to show off their new toy. At first, Zac is spooked by all of this, but once he gets to experience being invisible himself, he becomes addicted to it and all the possibilities invisibility brings. And they are exactly the same possibilities you see in every story about men becoming invisible. Awesome, Zac replied. He climbed unsteadily to his feet. Really, it was totally awesome. I want to get invisible again before school on Monday so I can spy in the girls' locker room. Have you even hit puberty, kid? Or are you just playing out the masculine roles taught to you by porkies? The girls from earlier show up, and Max, Zac, Aaron, April, and Lefty take turns going invisible, trying to beat each other's records at being invisible the longest. And they keep doing that. Forever. Seriously, the middle of this book drags. We go through the same cycle of characters go invisible, they look at their watches and track the time, the invisible person starts to feel weird, then they try to go visible again, sometimes there's a complication, but they end up coming back and act like the unpleasant feeling didn't happen. Max plays some lip service to maybe them stopping, but these kids are so obsessed with breaking each other's records that they ignore the physical harm this is clearly doing to them. That's fine, but it's slow and doesn't feel like it amounts to much. Nobody's really getting anything done. This is further aggravated by the fact that the kids think it's the mirror that's causing this when it's clearly the light bulb. It's the light being turned on and off that triggers the invisibility effect. The actual reflective mirror part of this thing doesn't appear to be doing anything, and yet all they talk about is the mirror part. And with them watching the time, they don't really get up to any fun invisibility shenanigans. Zac suggests spying in a girl's locker room. Aaron suggests using these powers to win a science fair, but nobody leaves the house. Ever. When Max's friends go home, we just start the next chapter a few days later when there's another session of invisibility marathoning. You could perform this book on stage if you wanted to. There are two exceptions that get the kids out of the attic, but they both feel like they're filling out time. First, Max's grandparents come over for dinner. As far as grandparents go, they're a 6 out of 10. Kind of boring and always nagging at each other for some trivial reason. "Your soup must be ice cold by now," Grammy said, clicking her tongue. "Nothing I hate more than cold soup. I mean, what's the point of having soup if it isn't steaming hot?" "It tastes okay," I said, taking a spoonful. "We had a delicious cold soup last summer," Poppy said. He loved to contradict Grammy and start arguments with her. "The strawberry soup, remember? You wouldn't want that hot, would you?" "It wasn't strawberry," Grammy told him, frowning. "It wasn't even soup. It was some kind of fancy yogurt." "No, it wasn't," Poppy insisted. "It was definitely cold soup." "You're wrong, as usual," Grammy snapped. "Happy Halloween." Seriously, you two, you better have some of those strawberry candies old people always seem to have, or I'm gonna have to flunk you out of grandparents' school. Well, it turns out Lefty went invisible and is messing around in the dining room while everyone's eating. He doesn't really do anything, like knock soup into Poppy's lap or whatever. He just lifts a glass off the table and is like, "Ooh, there's a glass floating around," which nobody but Max even notices. Max ends up making a bigger mess trying to stop Lefty than anything Lefty does. Max scolds Lefty about this, but as we saw earlier, Lefty just doesn't seem to have an off button. Later in the book, Zac goes invisible, and we actually get to go outside. Just to the backyard, but it's something. He slips into the neighbor's yard and makes some tomatoes float in front of some poor guy, causing him slight confusion. I mean, it's better than being a metaphor for the conservative boogeyman concept of transgender people in public restrooms, but the height of invisibility shenanigans in this book is a kid juggling fruit. Max continues to be uncomfortable with all of this, even more so when, one sleepless night, he goes up to the attic, only to hear faint whispering calling his name, "Max, Max." It's really the first moment of spookiness in this Goosebumps book. However, Max can never seem to put his foot down, and his so-called friends ignore his warnings. "Hey kid, did you know you can take things away from your friends? Like, I know spanking is out of style these days, but that's still allowed. Unscrew the light bulb and lock it away until they realize who's boss." One day, Max wakes up to find an invisible Lefty messing around in his closet. Mid-conversation, Lefty disappears. On top of not being able to see him, Max can't hear or feel him. Lefty is gone for a good chunk of time before coming back, and when he does come back, something's off about him, but Max can't place it. Max actually managed to cancel another session of "let's look at our watches while one of us gets invisible and doesn't do anything," but Lefty calls the rest of the gang and uncancels it for some reason. Max is surprised when his friends show up, but it doesn't stop them from playing around in the attic some more. Zac goes invisible, and then Aaron. Each time they stay invisible longer than they ever had before, and when they come back, there's something wrong with them. Again, Max can't quite place it. Zac and Aaron start to pressure Max into giving it a go, so Max caves to peer pressure and goes invisible. After a while, he starts to feel lightheaded and fuzzy again, but nobody turns off the light. Max realizes he's being sucked into the mirror. Supernatural forces pull him behind the glass, into a world of shadows. He's approached by a menacing figure. Himself. I was staring at myself. Me. Smiling back at me. The smile as cold as the glass that surrounded us. "Don't be afraid," he said. "I'm your reflection." "No!" His eyes, my eyes, studied me hungrily, like a dog staring at a meaty bone. His smile grew wider as I cried out in fear. "I've been waiting here for you," my reflection said, his eyes locked on mine. "Ah, it's Max's shadow self! This is Persona! Quick, Max, find a smiling guy with a really long nose." So yeah, there's a whole world inside the mirror, and when you stay invisible for a certain amount of time, you get sucked in and replaced with a mirror version of yourself. The reason why Zac and Aaron seemed off is because they were mirror images. Their physical attributes were flipped. This is most notable with Zac's future-style haircut. The buzz part is now on the right side. The mirror people clearly want to take our place, but beyond that, their motivation and true nature are unknown. Max struggles to keep his mirror version at bay, fighting to get out of the mirror world. Finally, Mirror Zac turns off the light, and Max, the real Max, returns to the real world. Mirror Zac and Mirror Aaron realize that this isn't their mirror comrade and hold Max down to turn him invisible again, when suddenly... But the door suddenly swung open. I saw Lefty stop at the doorway. He peered in, saw my reflection. He must have thought that reflection was me. "Think fast," he shouted, and tossed a softball. The ball smashed into the mirror. I saw the startled look on Lefty's face, and then I heard a crash and saw the mirror crack and shatter. My reflection didn't have time to react. He broke into shards of glass and fell to the floor. "No!" Aaron and Zac shrieked. I popped back into view just as Aaron and Zac's reflections floated up off the floor. They were sucked into the broken mirror, screaming all the way. Sucked into it as if a powerful vacuum cleaner was pulling them in. The mirror destroyed, the real Zac and Aaron are returned and the threat of the mirror people have been vanquished. April wasn't part of this fight, so she doesn't get any experience. Sorry, April, you should have been Persona 5 instead. Zac, Aaron, and April go home, not really sure what to make of all of this, something to keep them up at nights as they wrestle the mirror universe into their learnings from church. Max and Lefty go out into the backyard to unwind and play catch, but Max realizes that Lefty is throwing the ball with his right hand. It's Mirror Lefty. He's exactly the same, just right-handed now. The evils that have been unleashed. So that's the book. Let's Get Invisible feels like an exercise in restraint for R.L. Stine. In terms of plotting, it's one of his simplest and, in turn, tightest stories. There's no dead-end subplots like in The Werewolf of Fever Swamp, none of the off-the-top-of-my-head wackiness of The Beast from the East. There's more clarity of character than in Say Cheese and Die. Things are straightforward. The mechanics of the supernatural elements are crystal clear, and everybody acts like normal human beings. Not always rational human beings, but normal human beings. Typically, I see Goosebumps as a kidified version of old EC horror comics, usually bonkers and over the top. This time around, it's more like a Twilight Zone episode, more contained and grounded. We don't get a hit of origin or explanation for the mirror, and that works here. Having that mystery unsolved is the eeriest thing about this story. There are themes of peer pressure here. Max is very rarely down to going invisible, but his friends continue to press him into doing things he doesn't want to do. Going invisible doesn't give them a high or anything, it's just dumb kids being dumb. But nonetheless, there is an edge of just saying no moralizing just under the text. This might have landed a bit better if anyone actually did anything while invisible. If Aaron had cheated on a test or Zac stole a candy bar or something, show how power can corrupt and how all of this is impairing their judgment. But again, we never leave the property. The book is so restrained that a character going across the street might have given it a heart attack. It's weird to have to say this about a book, but setup and payoff is on point this time around. Lefty and his baseball, Zac's haircut, we do get to fire off some Chekhov's guns, and that's always nice. The characters aren't groundbreaking, but they all do their job. Again, Lefty is one of the more acceptable trademark annoying characters. Max's friends have distinct personalities, it's all good. The parents barely register, they don't do anything in the entire story. You could have replaced them with mannequins and nothing would have changed. However, this is one of the few Goosebumps books where not telling the adults actually makes sense. If the kids tell the parents about the magic lamp and mirror, their new toy will likely get taken away, and they don't realize the danger they're in until it's way too late. The kids in this book aren't getting replaced by their mirror versions until the final act. I think R.L. Stine actually thought this one out, guys. So why doesn't it work as well as it should? To put it simply, this feels like a 12-page short story that got stretched into a 140-page book. The majority of this book is these characters doing the same thing over and over again. Their invisibility contests do nothing but use up pages. Characters don't change, the stakes don't change. You could cut 70 pages out of the middle of this book and you really wouldn't be missing anything. And the rest could be tightened up without much problem. I can get behind Stine not wanting to fill his book with stock standard invisibility hijinks, but he doesn't really have anything to replace them with. It's a solid story as far as Goosebumps go, but it's just kind of a boring thing to read. I think Stine overcorrected, but the effort's definitely appreciated. I give Let's Get Invisible a shoehorn out of 10.